Welcome to CIHT Podcasts.
The advances made in digital technology have transformed how we live and work and will continue to have far-reaching impacts for some time to come. My name is Justin Ward, and for this CIHT podcast I'm speaking with Giles Perkins, Head of Future Mobility at WSP. Giles is leading work for the ADEPT Smart Places Live Labs programme, a 2-year, £22.9 million project funded by the Department for Transport that will run until spring 2021. The term future mobility is used. Could you just explain what this means?
Yes, absolutely, and thank you for the introduction. Future mobility is really interesting. I describe it sometimes as the things that are different from today. So if we think around how things might change in the future with regards to transportation and highway networks, many things are already in a state of flux and in a trajectory to change. So we're already seeing electric vehicle uptake, and there's been a significant uptick in the last month, particularly, of battery electric uptake. We can see new modes emerging, so we've seen shared bike hire and scooters and various other things. We've obviously seen the rise of data and connectivity, and there's lots of discussion around automated vehicles and those sorts of things. So that's all kind of part of the future mobility agenda, and if anybody hasn't seen it, it's well worth having a reading of DFT's Future of Mobility Urban Strategy, because that's a great document to get a primer on what's happening in this space. But interestingly, it's also around the attitudes of people travelling and what their perceptions are, but also, and importantly, it's about how materials change and how manufacturing changes and what that means for our networks, not only just in terms of the vehicles that operate on them and how those operate and what the customers are doing, but also the materials that are used, how things are constructed, how we manage data, how we think about transport and mobility as a whole integrated ecosystem. So future mobility isn't just about the vehicles, it's actually about a seismic change in transportation. And many commentators say that that seismic change could be as big as the motor car being introduced almost 100 years ago.
And you mentioned the Future of Mobility Urban Strategy that was published this year. What interested you about that strategy?
I think I've been in this space for 5 years now as a consultant doing paid work for a whole variety of clients. And there's a lot of professionals in the industry looking at all facets. The really good thing about the strategy coming out was it gave some very clear pointers as to what the department wanted to achieve with future mobility. And there are 9 principles which include being safe and secure by design, available to all parts of the society, importantly walking and cycling being the best options for urban journeys, etc. Draw some very neat boundaries to how we might consider future of mobility. And it's really important because it makes sure that we still think about things like walking and cycling, that we do consider the move to zero emissions, that we do think about how data can facilitate these things and how we can have an open marketplace. So ultimately, that the customers, the users, me and you, end up with better experiences, and mobility serves our places, our towns, cities, rural areas in a much better way than it does now.
But if we look at transport today, people might observe roads with potholes, congestion, low user satisfaction, to name a few. And in this emerging future, we see, for example, electrification, automated vehicles, and as you mentioned earlier, the new sort of business players and new business models. How do you see these developments addressing the current challenges?
And I think that's the nub of the issue. There is a real danger in this agenda to focus about the theoretical end point, the Jetsons' vision of the future, for those that can remember the Jetsons cartoon. What we're doing with the ADEPT project is really considering the trajectory from those issues of today. So how we get our roads to work better, how we can solve the pothole problems, how we can stop flooding, how we can cater for electric vehicles arriving, how we can use data to manage our networks better. trajectory of change from those problems of today to a sometimes theoretical version of what great might look like in the future is two ends of a telescope, and it's really important that we look through both ends to make sure that we're not just focusing on the shiny technology at the end, but we actually create networks and customer experiences and solutions for people that actually meet their current needs as well as having a mind to the future. And this is the really important bit. We mustn't forget that transport and mobility is the thing that allows everything to happen. It allows us to get to our jobs. It allows us to improve our skills. It allows us to undertake our leisure activities. And hugely importantly, every single piece of food and our medicines and everything else is transported by freight, which uses our roads and railways. Now, it's important that we consider those things in the round, and it's important that we recognise that there are external changes and there are technology changes, but we need to tie that firmly to how we can make our networks better and how we can remove friction in the system for all of us as users, starting at a point of now looking into the future.
I was going to ask a bit about the huge amount of media hype that exists around some of the technologies, and I was going to ask about not just using technology for the sake of it, because we're looking for outcomes, we're not just using technology for the sake of it, but I think you've kind of covered that really well on both those points. So can we move on to the Live Labs project itself? There was a competition in 2018 and that received 28 bids from ADEPT members, so that's from local authorities, and 10 were shortlisted, and they presented their pitches through a sort of Dragon's Den style process. Could you tell me which projects were successful and what they are focusing on?
Yeah, it was fascinating, the conversation that we had during the competition, and the real kind of scale and enthusiasm from industry across last summer in responding to what was a very open brief of how we could use technology in its widest sense, smart materials, smart energy, smart mobility, etc., to really improve our networks at the moment. So we had a large number of submissions, as you said, and we've got 8 areas now that have been the recipients of the money from the department, which are Cumbria, Staffordshire, Solihull and Birmingham, Central Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Reading, Suffolk and Kent. And they're all approaching the exam question of how we can make our local roads better from completely different starting points. So I'll give you some boundaries rather than describing all of them individually. I'll give a range of the sorts of things that are being looked at. So if we take Cumbria is looking at plastic in roads at scale. So it's looking at how you could take a circular economy approach to plastic waste and how you can use that to improve pavement materials, the durability, the performance, etc., which lots of authorities across the UK have been looking at. And what Cumbria are doing is taking a deep dive look at that, looking at new mixes, looking at academic research, and collecting that all together into one place for the benefit of the whole of industry. If we look at, say, Staffordshire, who are looking at how autonomous vehicles and energy could be brought together at the campus at Keele to solve some problems, and thinking about some of the wider issues and the wider potential, almost using the Keele University as a sandpit to test different innovations. And they've taken a very open approach to how that might be done in terms of encouraging SMEs and others to come forward with ideas that could be applied. Solihull and Birmingham, through Transport for West Midlands, looking at the application of big data to try and manage the corridors in the West Midlands conurbation in a more integrated way to really deliver congestion busting and journey time savings right across the area. Central Bedfordshire, really taking quite a remarkable approach to how we might harvest energy and store energy that might be created from our roads and pavements. So doing some really interesting things with pavement generation for kinetic paving and energy from roads, thinking about how the link between mobility and energy can be improved in the future. Buckinghamshire, an integrated approach to how you might use existing assets within the network, street lighting in particular, for how you might use street lighting columns to do different things in the future, energy generation, mobile phone transmission, etc., and thinking about the larger data-led approach to how you can deliver benefits for different types of communities going forward. And the interesting thing about that is the use of 3D printed materials, so new manufacturing techniques to try and solve some of the existing problems that we have. Reading, large-scale application of data right across the conurbation, looking at how data can improve all of the facets of the mobility equation. Suffolk, building upon the work that they've done on connectivity and their existing highways assets, but looking not just how data and communications can improve the lot of road travellers, but thinking about how data and communications can give wider benefits to society. So how can we use communications through highway assets to help improve some of our vulnerable communities, for instance? And Kent, looking again at how you can take an innovation-led approach to solving some of the problems on the highway network by taking an integrated approach to data management and asset management. And again, similar to the Staffordshire approach of having an open approach to innovation so that people can think about different ways of tackling the problem. So not trying to design the end solution now, but thinking about how industry can work together with partners to deliver change. So that's a very brief overview, and there is detail on the ADEPT website. If you go to adeptnet.org.uk/live labs, there's an awful lot of detail that you can download and have a look there. So what we've got in that geographic spread of Cumbria to Kent, West Midlands to Suffolk and everywhere in between is an integrated programme that covers many of the core elements of what future mobility is, many of the core initiatives and directions of travel that we want to achieve as an industry and local roads, and firmly tying it to the department's desire to improve some of those things that we talked about now. How can we improve pavement design? How can we ensure that our networks are resilient and doing different things? How can we ensure that the customers, the users, the drivers, the freight can get around as efficiently as possible? So it's a really exciting program that is really kind of pushing the envelope of what's possible and taking a much more agile approach to how we work.
And when the Live Labs were announced, the then Transport Secretary Chris Grayling said in January this year, these will, and his words, will see how new technologies work in the real world to ensure our roads are built for the 21st century. So what progress has been made on the ground?
It's a really important point that the Transport Secretary made, that this is really looking forward as to how we might design and implement technology in its wider sense. And I think there's a danger of thinking about technology as that just means electronics or shiny things. Technology is everything from materials to data to energy to mobility itself. So how we think about our networks, how we design our networks can deliver significant benefits in the future, not just for customers, but also for places in terms of how highways integrate with other modes, how highways integrate with our urban and rural centres and our cities, and how we think about this thing in a holistic manner. So the projects themselves have been going through mobilisation at the moment. So over the summer, we've been setting out as a programme how we're going to manage the programme, how we're going to monitor and evaluate it, and what our communication strategies. The 8 Live Labs themselves have been gearing up and starting to go through their procurement processes, developing their project plans with a view to them delivering different things at different points. Because the projects are all not only different in terms of what they're trying to achieve, but also different in the ways that they're approaching that, we're going to see a rolling out of interventions, some of them being earlier than others, research coming forward, etc. And a key part of this whole agenda for Live Labs, and this is a really important point, that we're going to be articulating our learnings right the way across the 2 years. So this isn't that we come back in 2 years' time with a report that very nicely says what all the successes were. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be sharing learning. We're going to be inviting others from industry to come and have dialogue with us. So, for instance, we have a session at the ADEPT conference in November where ADEPT members and those attending the conference will be able to quiz the live labbers about what they're doing and what their progress is. We'll be sharing research as we're able. We'll be reporting on what we're doing, successes, and importantly, if there are any failures, so that others can learn as to what works and what doesn't work. So it's a truly agile approach, which is going to deliver things at different times in different ways than perhaps we're used to experiencing. And this is the important point, that in the department and the Transport Minister putting their weight behind this, they're recognising that there might be different ways that we can tackle some of our problems, and taking a more agile approach to it could deliver things more quickly, deliver things in different ways, but importantly allow that to be scaled right across industry for the benefit of all of us working in the sector.
Just thinking that it's actually, today is a campaign from the Department for Transport called Road Heroes Day, and that's about celebrating the great work that has been undertaken by highway crews across the country who work tirelessly day in, day out to ensure the roads are managed and maintained. And the day is sort of to highlight the unsung heroes and show the public and media the great work that they do in all weathers and on social hours to keep our roads safe and help improve journeys for all. And it's really exciting that this project is underway, because I think it also shows that the sector is thinking about how to improve, how to take advantage of all the change and technology change and changes in the sciences that can improve things on the ground. How do you see the sort of next steps to sort of up to 2021? Where would you see some of the kind of major gains to be made?
I think it's a really interesting question, because obviously going through the competition process, we asked the bidders to envision what success would look like in the future. So we have some very bold ambitions from our 8 Live Lab groups who are setting their stall out and working extremely hard and thinking, some very innovative, primary new thinking being done to tackling the issues. I think what we're going to see, as I kind of touched on earlier, that we will see things coming out at different points in time. So as we're working up those programs, and I have seen the detail of some of those programs, but I wouldn't want to reveal what's going to happen quite yet. But we will see some early deployments of some things coming forward, which will be fantastic, and demonstrating some of the more practical elements. Some of the more innovative elements might take time to deliver, because we've got to work with other partners. Some of those partners include Network Rail, for instance, at a rail station project. And thinking about the interfaces that we have with industry. And it's a really important point there you make about the Road Heroes Day today, because this isn't about a set of innovators doing something in isolation. This is actually about the DFT providing funds to work in partnership, not only with the live lab's successful areas, but also with Atkins, Kia, EY, O2, Ringway and WSP, who have all put resources into this program in supporting the Live Lab program over the 2 years. So whilst I'm program director, I do have support from a team of young and very enthusiastic, I must say, professionals who are supporting me in delivering this program. So we're not only just kind of designing the solutions for the future, we're also developing the skills for the future. So thinking about those road heroes, I'll be hoping that the future road heroes are people that come out of this program who've learned things and deploying things and can really deliver those efficiencies for our highway network, so it continues and is improved to deliver for the economic benefits of our nation, so that we can move goods around more efficiently, so we can get people to education opportunities, that we can improve the commute, all those sorts of things that we're utterly dependent upon. So it's a really exciting time.
Well, thank you again. That was fascinating, and all the best to you and the team for the future work on shaping the future of mobility. So thanks for listening to the CIHT podcast. I was speaking with Giles Perkins, Head of Future Mobility at WSP. Thanks very much, Giles.
Thank you.